Hello and welcome to Trial by Stone, the Dark Crystal podcast. I'm your host, Phil, and I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to this show as we, of course, chat about the Dark Crystal. And I think this show is actually a very interesting one. So we've got a lot to discuss, especially, recently the Royal Opera House and Henson Company, there was a big announcement about the upcoming season of shows for 2021 and 2022. And one of those shows happened to be based on the Dark Crystal. So I think we've got a lot to talk about. So, of course, with me is my co-host, Sydnni. So, Sydnni, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about the ballet. I only hope that, whenever it happens, I have the means to go to London, because that's a pretty good little jump across the pond for me, as it is
Yes.
for you as well.
Yes, yeah.
Just from different ends. So
I know, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I sort of have been doing a bit of research, and I know that some cinemas in Melbourne, I think the Palace cinemas in particular, they do sometimes screen things for the stage or ballet, or dance, that sort of thing.
yeah.
And I think they do sometimes screen stuff from the Royal Opera of London. So
Yeah.
I'm sort of having fingers crossed that if it does get a screening,
Yeah.
I'll
I
definitely
really
be
hope that happens
yeah.
over here as well.
Yeah.
I don't recall if it's the same opera house that we have showings in a lot of our theaters over here as well, but I know we get a lot from the Metropolitan Opera in New York. We get a lot of things from there translated onto screen that they show in theaters over here. But I don't know about from England. I really hope so, because honestly, sorry to my fellow Yankees who are listening, fellow Americans, but British theater is way better than ours. No shame to the performers we have over here. I am one of you, but my visit to London, the shows that I saw, the performers I saw on stage in the West End, it blew everything I've ever seen over here out of the water. So I imagine the talent is just going to be amazing to see Thra live on stage, especially since they're collaborating with actual Henson to make actual puppets on stage. That's
Yes, yeah,
bananas.
Exactly. I know, yeah. So, so I'll just read what was sort of been, the press release and all that kind of stuff. So, so the Linbury Theatre continues to be a driving force for collaboration and creativity, featuring independent companies and schools and developing new work. The Royal Ballet presents Company Wayne McGregor in The Dark Crystal Odyssey, a work for family audiences, choreographed and directed by Wayne McGregor. Based on Jim Henson's iconic 1982 film, this magical coming-of-age story brings together a team of world-class collaborators, including artists Brian and Wendy Froud, composer Joel Cadbury, digital designers Contrast Moment, lighting designer Lucy Carter, dramaturg Uzma Hamid, costume designer Philip Delamore, and face and body artist Alex Box, with puppets and props from the Jim Henson's Creature Shop. So yeah, as you mentioned, especially with the Jim, having the Jim Henson's Creature Shop going to be involved in some capacity.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think, like, if they're going to have these, puppets onto the show and if it's going to be more based on the original film, I would imagine that they'd have to build, new character, create, redo some of the Skeksis, especially for the film. Of course, they'd have some that they would, still have in storage from Age of Resistance that they could sort of touch up and, age them up significantly.
But the puppets that they use on the series and in the film, they take a lot more, breaks in between. Like, they're busting their butts. They're working really hard in those, operating those puppets. But for screen, you are filming for little increments at a time, and then you can cut and like take a break and get out of there for a breather for a second and then get back in your puppet. Whereas on stage, you know, these are going to have to be puppets that can possibly, you know, be seen and operated for much longer increments of time.
And that's the thing, because not only, you know, with that, you know, they're performed by people, of course, you know, I mean, do you think that they'll actually have puppets, you know, like as characters trying to perform dance stuff, or do you reckon it's actually going to be, you know, or they'll be, you know, you know, people performing it, you know, as well, like in the foreground, but maybe the puppets in the background. I don't know. I know there's a lot of
there's a lot of possibilities. I feel like what I'm envisioning when I think about the possibility of the Dark Crystal being on stage, particularly if it's based on the film, which the press release kind of alludes to the fact that it's based on the film, although it doesn't really say that it's only based on the film. It just gives a little synopsis for the movie.
That's the thing, because I think I mean, of course it's used in the film as sort of like, oh, this is the selling point, you know, this is based on the film, but that, I mean, that's a big question, is whether it's going to be based on the whole film, or but then it sort of hints about this magical coming of age story, and you know, I mean, whether that's going to be possibly, you know, whether it takes place after the events of the original film, for example, you know, about Jen and Kira, or whether it's going to be, you know, the show from, just from their perspective, whether it's like after the film, and whether they tell sort of the backstory of the Dark Crystal. That sort of goes back and forth. I don't know.
I think you know, creation myths would make for a really cool expansion. I think if they were to adapt from a lot of different Dark Crystal stories and sort of combine them, that's sort of what I think the title implies. Calling it an Odyssey, to me, implies that it's multiple stories. That it's not just one, you know, piece of it, which the film is ultimately just one piece of the entire Odyssey. So if it ends up just being an adaptation of the film, I think that's a really weird choice for a title. Then they should just call it the Dark Crystal. You know, if you're gonna call it an Odyssey, especially, that really has a lot of implications for being much bigger than just that one hero's journey of Jen, and that one chapter. But anyway, if you know, if there is a lot of focus on the film, though, what I imagine a live stage show with puppets would have to be, I think Jen and Kira, I think the Gelfling characters would probably be people and not puppets. And I think a lot of the atmosphere and probably the Skeksis would be puppets, like, because part of what defines Thra is the fact that the whole world is living, and there's not a single shot in the entire film or series where you aren't seeing at least a handful of puppets. But the environment is puppets, not just the characters. And so I think I could see that being heavily utilized in a stage production, there being the set design incorporating puppets in the environment and the flora and fauna, you know. So I think the main characters would be live actors, live dancers who are interacting with the puppets that are existing in the environment. And then I can't imagine the Skeksis not being puppets, you know. I'm almost envisioning like almost like how they did like when I think of big like puppetry in theater, two things come to mind. One is the Lion King, because the Lion King Broadway musical, there is a lot of puppetry, there's a lot of, you know, big animals on stage, but they don't make any sort of attempt to conceal the fact that they're puppets. It's very much part of it. Like you see the puppets and the actors performing with them, and it's sort of part of the aesthetic of it, which works really well. I could see them doing something kind of like that. But also I think of a very, very different kind of show, but the show Equus, which uses puppets to play horses, but they're sort of, well, there are a couple different productions of it. In one version, they're actors wearing big horse heads, but there were other versions where they use big like armature puppets as horses with like, you know, that with lights and like smoke effects would come out of them and stuff. And it was sort of this big grandiose thing. And I could see maybe the Skeksis being handled like that, as these big puppets that we can see are clearly puppets, and we can see the people operating them. They're not going to make any sort of attempt to conceal the actors or the puppeteers. They're probably going to be performing almost another totally different show, but like Avenue Q, where they have the puppets, which are very Muppet-like puppets, but the actors are still performing with them. And, you know, they're not trying to hide under the stage and do the puppets. You see the actors alongside them. I feel like at the same time, if it's a ballet, there's not going to be dialogue. So
where it's going to be definitely more central to the music, which I mean, I think with Joel Cadbury, he actually posted something on Instagram. I think it was like, you know, warming up the music, you know, sort of thing. And it was very he just played like a very echoey kind of take of the theme song.
Okay.
Not that it means that's going to be what it is, but it's like, you know, at least he's you know, getting the ball rolling. And I mean,
I can't imagine they wouldn't at least allude to the theme music from the original film, because even Age of Resistance, even though it's an entirely new score, it still uses the original theme to establish this is the franchise, here it is, and, you know, in the first episode. And so I can't imagine any iteration of the Dark Crystal not utilizing that theme somehow. Whether they elaborate more on any other parts of Trevor Jones's score, who knows? They didn't say that in the press release at all. I kind of have a feeling it's going to be entirely new music. I saw a production several years back of Edward Scissorhands as a ballet adaptation.
Okay.
And it was interesting to see something that is, you know, a movie with dialogue, but translated into a medium where there's no talking whatsoever. Everything is done entirely physically. And when I think of Edward Scissorhands, I think about Danny Elfman's score, how it makes me cry like crazy. But they didn't use any of that in the ballet. It was entirely new music and entirely new music sequences. And they might go that route for this as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think things. I think like you mentioned about, you know, the term Odyssey. Is a very, very open. That like that there could be. I mean, you could get this big overall story of the world of the Dark Crystal, and whether they do incorporate some of creation myths. I mean, again, I'd love to see, you know, like an interpretation of Ronip, for example. I don't know if they would do it, but I just that'd be really interesting if it's sort of, because I mean, Odyssey is actually a term that even I think Taron Egerton he quoted saying that, you know that the Dark Crystal, it is an Odyssey. You know, there's so deep and rich in mythology. So it will be very
referring to the whole franchise at that point, though.
The whole franchise as an Odyssey.
So maybe this could be as well. If it's incorporating more aspects than just the film. I mean, it's just the word has so many implications for largeness and grandiosity. Like it's not just, and all things considered, I think the biggest criticism that the original Dark Crystal movie received was just that the story was very simple. The overall plot of
very A to B.
What happens is just a very simple hero's journey, because as Jim Henson and Frank Oz have talked about ad nauseum, that's not really the point of the movie. They started with the creature design and the characters and built a story from there. The story had to start out simple to introduce us to that whole world. So you couldn't really call the story of the movie that you're shaping some form of storytelling around. You couldn't really call that an Odyssey by itself. You have to take into consideration all of the other things that have grown from that seed, like all of the expanded universe, all of the books, all of the comics, all of the Age of Resistance. There's so much to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
Call it
Yeah,
an
yeah,
Odyssey.
yeah, absolutely. And like I guess, the thing with Dark Crystal is that it's always had so many different interpretations, through all these different
Yeah.
mediums. And I think this doing it as sort of it's sort of been a bit of a confusing thing, because I know a lot of media reports are sort of been reporting it as a ballet,
Yeah.
but with the press release, it's sort of like, well, they're sort of describing it as a dance work. And that's why I'm really curious, if it's going to be one or the other, or if it's going to be more like contemporary dance, where it's sort of, um,
Yeah.
be lots of various forms of dance.
Yeah. Or if
With
they're just
yeah,
calling it a ballet, referring to the fact that the entire story is done through dance and there's no dialogue or speaking whatsoever. Um, that's going to
that
be
genre, yeah.
that's going to be a big challenge, I think, because I kind of think that narration plays a big role in introducing, talking about what happens in Thra and the overall story of the Dark Crystal. There's so much to like give context for that
Yeah.
I feel like if there isn't at least like a narrator framing it somehow, that could be potentially really confusing for anybody who maybe is not
Yeah,
on
going, yeah,
our level of fandom, or
yeah,
who
just
hasn't
just
seen
going,
everything.
yeah, just going into the Dark Crystal Odyssey and not knowing, never heard of the film or
Yeah.
anything like that, and just thinking, what,
Yeah.
this so out of bizarre kind of
Yeah.
experience.
They're going to have to walk
Yeah,
a
yeah.
line of like not alienating the audience to
Mm,
be only for fans of the movie and the show already. Like they have to anticipate that there are going to be new fans coming in who are just there to see a cool ballet, because
mm,
especially people who get season tickets, because this is part of a season of ballets. Remember, you don't
mm,
necessarily just get tickets for the one show. A lot of people buy the season to go and
mm,
see all of the shows at the opera house, and so that's going to include a lot of patrons who are just there because they appreciate ballet, because
yeah.
they appreciate the art form, and are
Yes,
just going to be, they're supporting the season and supporting the artists and the performers. So they're not necessarily there for the fact that it's Dark Crystal. So
mm,
they have to not alienate those people, because if they were just making it for Dark Crystal fans, I mean, the numbers show that that's not the smartest way to go to
yeah.
do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So no, it's. I mean, again, this announcement sort of came out of nowhere. Much like like most Dark Crystal sort of news.
Yeah.
They
It's
come out
always
of
nothing,
nowhere.
nothing, nothing, and
I
then
know.
something
Boom.
big.
I know. Yep. But yeah, and I know Wayne McGregor. He did. His quote was, I think, I think that he posted on social media. He says, of all the amazing films I saw in my childhood, The Dark Crystal remains my epic go-to. And now to bring this fantastical adventure to the stage, not only with an incredible creative team, but with pioneering artists Brian and Wendy Froud, the original film collaborators of the great Jim Henson. Thunderstruck.
Thunder.
Yeah, I know, I know. That's the thing. I'm just like thinking, the Thunderstruck. It's like, oh, I wonder if it's going to be an AC/DC sort of incorporation. Yeah. Let's dissect
That's
this word
pandering
so
much
much.
too much to
No, no,
me. That
yeah.
is that would be much too like, hold on, wait, you're gonna combine 80s rock with no,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
No, no,
Um,
no, no. But I mean, but though with Thunderstruck, you could use that probably with the Skeksis,
mhm. Yeah,
this
especially with the
start of the
gourmand walking into the room.
yeah.
Thunder.
Yes.
um
Yeah.
anyway, how long did that take for things to get weird?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting. But that also raises another good point, is that they're making a point to tell us that the Frouds are deliberately involved in this, which is of course they are. How
The
can you
best.
embark on any new Dark Crystal project without at least consulting the Frouds?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're making a point to deliberately say, like, we're working with them, they're part of this.
Mm,
So that also has implications about, like, well, there's probably going to be just stuff to look at everywhere. This is going to be immensely visual. There's going to be, I imagine that there will probably be like a screen I feel like there's probably going to be a digital aspect to the background. Again, this is just me spitballing, conjecture.
And I can see that in a way, because I mean, I don't know, with during Age of Resistance, I would imagine that they would have took a lot of photos, or even some video background backdrop sort of thing, that they could potentially use that instead of because I mean, for them to have to like, oh yeah, let's put like a lot of props here, let's create these locations. And
well, I mean, even the original film uses matte paintings on glass as a technique that I feel like it's a marriage of media in that way. But what I imagine happening on stage is they might be incorporating some artwork from the Frouds sort of displayed, maybe as part of the set design, maybe in a digital form in some way. Maybe I imagine the sets are going to be infused with puppetry. Like, that's, again, when I think of Thra, I think of the fact that there's not a single shot that doesn't have puppets in it. And so the scenery and things that you wouldn't think of as puppets, plants and grass and moss and bugs crawling around and things like that. Like, you can't create Thra without having those things, that sense of everything is alive. So that the set itself is going to have to be constantly moving. It's not just going to be like one set that everybody's dancing around in that's the same thing all the time. It's going to have to be ever changing and like something to look at on every corner of the stage. Like, it's going to be wild. It's going to be something totally unlike anything we've seen on stage. That's for sure. There's no way it's going to be boring.
No, definitely not. No, not when it comes to Dark Crystal. So no, it was just just very, very interesting. And I think a lot of people are very I think a lot of people I think we're all a bit intrigued, and just sort of looking forward to seeing what's to come, like with this the Dark Crystal Odyssey. So it's just
I'm trying to look at what else this director has, Wayne McGregor, what else he's done.
So actually, thinking about that, I actually got one of our listeners, Eric, and he actually posted his a lot of thoughts actually about this Dark Crystal Odyssey. Eric, he has a lot of background in dancing and has performed in a couple of films and quite a few other things. So I asked him for some, what his thoughts and
artist insight.
Yes, exactly. So this is so he said, so this is what he wrote. I really am so puzzled with Wayne McGregor doing the Dark Crystal Ballet. I think his company is beautiful, very well known in the contemporary world of dance. He's a minimalist when it comes to his pieces, which is why it's an odd choice for me. But I am almost in shock because of it actually happening. He loves to use his dancers to make shapes and how they balance each other. I also think a ballet is such a challenge for Dark Crystal because I don't know of any ballet with dialogue, no words. Everything has to be told through movement. And I might pause here for a bit because that's the thing I'm sort of thinking about, with this ballet or dance work. I do think that we're going to see sort of, especially with the Skeksis and Mystics and the Urskeks, like 3 different styles where I think the Mystics, will be more, more moving, flowing with hands and, doing all that kind of stuff, where the Skeksis might be, I don't know, more archaic or rigid, like, like sudden movements or just something a bit opposite, I guess. And that, if they are going to do, the Dark Crystal or, the end part, it'd be interesting to see what the the Urskeks become a combination of the 2 styles.
Exactly. Because what Eric talks about there, how perhaps this choreographer is known for the dancers making shapes with their bodies. I've seen a lot of stuff like that in like more contemporary dance, where the dancers will sort of Lego themselves together in different shapes to make interesting visual things happen together as a unit. And I absolutely could see that happening with the Mystics in particular. My mind immediately goes to, the original rehearsal footage of all of the contortionists and the circus performers rehearsing on the floor as the Mystics, and all the ways that they had to move their bodies very much like a dance. How so many of the original performers of the Mystics were in fact dancers and came from a background of
that's true, yeah.
stage performance and mime and cirque. And so I think of the Mystics immediately working almost probably with no puppetry to minimal puppetry.
Yeah.
I could see the Mystics being entirely done with movement down on the ground, and maybe two dancers sort of shaping together to form all the arms, and maybe one of them could be holding up a head, very much like how the actual puppets are done.
Yes, yeah.
But then I could see the Skeksis being a lot more industrial, like kind of what I mentioned before, how you have an actor or a performer, and the Skeksis, puppet that they take with them. And then it's possible that, at the conclusion, when they join and form the union to make the Urskeks, that the performers probably actually will physically get to merge in some way to create something new, and maybe like go from being down on the ground to being sort of upright, and maybe get inside of the Skeksis puppet and like turn it into an Urskek puppet somehow. Like there's so many possibilities there that could potentially be just like so interesting visually to see that happen.
Exactly, yeah. And at Dark Crystal, it is a very visual thing. So I think, this dance works, like, ballet, I think is a perfect format. Just sort of thinking about it after a while. And like you said, all the behind the scenes that, especially with the Mystics, that a lot of them did come from dance backgrounds. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
I wonder if there will be guys on stilts playing Landstriders.
Landstriders, I know, yeah. That would be very interesting. Yeah.
It would be so cool.
I know. Yeah, I know. So Eric, he continued on. He says, if it's based on the film, I would expect them to use the score. A lot of dance company performances use live orchestra, which I think, with having Joel Cadbury, I would imagine that might be the case. Or who knows? I assume this will too, and the score to some abstract movement will be pretty amazing if done right. There is nothing cheesy about this guy. And as far as I know, he's never used any props in his pieces. So there certainly aren't puppeteers. I read somewhere he's making it a coming of age story. So I'm assuming Jen and Kira will be played by dancers and will most likely be on stage the whole time.
Yep.
But this is serious. A lot of friends write me about it, dancers. It's an interesting buzz on Playbill and Broadway world. People are talking about it to me. Probably more than they did the show, because now dance is involved. And I think he sort of said that sorry, I'm just he did say like, I'm a bit sore because it might be casting because it's entirely his contemporary company, and I think they'll likely hire puppeteers to perform around them. So I think he wanted to have a part in it. And I think because I think with the dance companies, I think they have their own people, sort of thing. So I think it's definitely a hard break in with that. So moving on, he's saying it. He's very earthy and philosophical. So he probably loves the spiritual aspects of Dark Crystal. He will use that. But this style of performance is special interest and not mainstream whatsoever. I'm just scratching my head, but can't wait to see the leaked rehearsal videos. This is going to be the reason I finally go to London. And that was his 2 cents. So yeah.
Thanks,
that was
Eric.
a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Eric.
Raised some good points for sure.
Absolutely.
Good to have a little background on the choreographer as well, because I'm totally unfamiliar.
No, and I think when I chat to him, looking up that it's Wayne McGregor, and he's like, no, this guy, he is legit, very legit. So, so I think that's the beginning. And I actually watched a TED video he did many years ago, and it was actually pretty good because he was just going through like the 3 different methods in choreography.
Yeah.
And I think like I think one was like body to body transfer, which is like sort of teaching a dancer something, and it's up to the dancer to interpret, you know, what the choreographer did. And then there's quite a few things about it. So if you get a chance to watch that, I think it's, you know, just to get a bit of insight in his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna have
um,
to look up, videos of other things that he's choreographed and try to sort of get an idea, because at the same time he might be deliberately trying to do something that's very much not like anything else he's done. Like maybe, if a lot of what he's done has been very much sort of one style,
yeah,
and now he's trying to break out of that. That's kind of risky, but
yeah, yeah,
but I respect it.
yeah,
And but we know that it's not going to be a total failure just alone the fact that the Henson Creature Shop and the Frouds are deliberately involved. That means that they're invested in it somehow, and that there's going to be continuity and integrity in terms of it matching with the rest of the franchise in at least a visual style. But the choreography and the dance work, that's just a whole, I say a whole new art form to incorporate in this world, but it kind of isn't when you consider the performers that were cast in the original film and who were, it wasn't just puppeteers. You had actual physical performers and dancers and, acrobats and mimes and, people with clown backgrounds, all very physical performers. And when you really, really think about it, a lot of the Dark Crystal film is spent without much dialogue. No. And the original vision for all of the scenes with the Skeksis was entirely in an alien Skeksis language. Originally, they were never supposed to even be speaking English, and all of the scenes with Skeksis were essentially dialogue free because we didn't understand what they were saying, and the whole story was meant to come across in their actions and their physicality. Before they decided that it'd be a better idea if the audience can actually understand them.
Understand what they're saying,
but that was still part of the original vision, was for it to intent, not rely on dialogue. Because again, it's not a story-driven story. It is a creature and character-driven story. It's about the characters that you come across and how much artistry is in all of the creatures and in the world, and the world building. That came first before the story did. So that means, having a lot of chit chat is not necessarily necessary.
No. Yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing. I mean, the world essentially came first.
Yep.
And the story came second. But it was really interesting. It was such an interesting, I guess, experiment with them at the time to consider doing the Skeksis in entirely alien language, and that unfortunately just didn't work out. Probably didn't work out for the audiences. I think with the test screenings, I think that was probably the big thing. That's like, no, we have to get to speak English, and I guess much of the language in the Dark Crystal film was sort of, that's the thing now with Age of Resistance, because it's like, well, they all speak in English, so it must have been easy for the writers to not having to redub anything. But I'm sure they probably did every now and then.
Well, what's interesting about the redubbing is that, with the original film, they had filmed the Skeksis scenes with them speaking in another language. And then later, after the shots were already complete and edited, they then had to redub dialogue where they went in and recorded, and they had to match, write the new dialogue in such a way that organically fit with the mouth flaps,
mouth movements,
and then they had to perform it in such a way that made sense with the edited footage of the mouth flaps. And if you think about it, it is kind of a similar deal, even though under different circumstances, but what the voice actors had to do with Age of Resistance, because they, as we all saw in the making of documentary a million times, how usually with animation the actors record first and then they animate to what the actors have done, whereas with Age of Resistance it's the reverse, where they are looking at a screen watching the mouth flaps, and they have to record their dialogue to match the mouth flaps. Not terribly unlike how they had to do that for the film as well.
And well, I mean, that's the thing.
reasons.
Like most feature films, you know, they do have ADR in post anyways, so you have the actors coming back to the studio to record the lines. But I think with puppets, it must be a very different challenge. I mean, I guess a big challenge is just not only you're doing the voice, but you have to record a lot of breathing, a lot of movements, because it's like you're building up the sound from scratch. You know, it's not like Dark Crystal. You can't, you have the sound as reference, but when you're editing it, you're starting from the ground up.
Yeah.
And that's just
so now for a ballet, this entire conversation gets thrown out the window at that point, and we're just focusing on the physicality at that point. I'm sure there'll be sound effects. I'm sure the Skeksis will make noises. I'm sure that we'll hear Chamberlain whimpering. I'm sure that there's going to be Fizgigs barking, but in terms of dialogue and having to deliver a performance with mouth flaps, these are going to be entirely different kinds of puppets. Not just for the reason I mentioned at the beginning about how they're going to be handled for much longer periods of time, but also the fact that these are not puppets that are designed to emote facially when they speak. These are puppets that aren't likely going to need to speak at all. They may or may not even have functioning mouth flaps. These aren't going to be puppets that we typically think of when we think puppets. We automatically do this and imagine the hand in the face, and that might not be the case at all, because these are puppets that are likely not going to speak. They're just going to be visual physical presence to accompany dancers who are moving with their bodies. It's a whole different type of puppetry.
Definitely. I know, the mind boggles. It's like, it's just, there's just so much to sort of think about how it's all going to work.
I really hope that they give us footage of the production, like leading up to it, like rehearsals, designs of puppets. I hope that they release like little videos here and there of us to, get a little insight as to what kinds of puppets we're going to be seeing and what the set design is going to look like, and how they're going to incorporate puppetry into the scenery, and if there's going to be anything digital involved, like any glimpses of the choreography. Like, I am excited for, as we get closer to it, hopefully seeing some of that process and seeing it come together. And for the sake of marketing and getting people hyped for it, it would be pretty dumb not to do that.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, I mean, again, for us, it's really big congratulations to Wayne McGregor and all the people of the Royal Opera House. For doing this. And it's certainly, we'll certainly be keeping our eye on it with great interest. It's very exciting. It's a very, very different take on the Dark Crystal, and it'll just be very interesting to see how it turns out. So very much looking forward to it. I
don't know how many listeners we have who are in England or closer to the actual opera house. I know we have at least a couple, so hopefully you lucky dogs out there will have easier access to get to go see it when that happens.
And certainly have them on the show somehow, so to talk about it.
If they don't release it on screen for us not Londoners to witness it somehow, then we're and we don't have if we happen to not get free tickets just for being famous Dark Crystal celebrities, and we have to miss out on going to London and see it, then definitely we'll want to have guests on who have seen it to talk about their firsthand experience. And it'd be really great if we could get a hold of somebody from the show somehow to tell us about it. So
exactly. So no, I think we got a lot to look forward to with this. And they haven't announced the actual date. I know it's part of the 2021 to 2022 season. And I think from what I've heard, I think the dates might be released, I think, from June the 1st. So I think it's like from that date onwards that they sort of, here's the schedule for 2021 to 2022.
I can't imagine this
yeah.
show actually being on stage anytime this year because of how
No.
massive an undertaking it is. And I just feel like they would have to have more of it done now already at this stage in time in order. There's just like not enough of the year left, in my opinion, to put on a show of this magnitude. I'm imagining like needing way more months of preparation and rehearsal.
Definitely.
So I just, based on my background with theater, and how long it takes to put on a normal show, I can't imagine we'll see that this show is on stage in 21. It's probably going to be in 22. I hope not. That'd be cool if not.
I know. It'd be a nice surprise if it came out. Say if it came out, towards the end of the year in 2021. It would be neat. I definitely think 2022. I mean, after all, it's going to be the 40th anniversary year for the Dark Crystals. So I think,
that's the other reason too, that it definitely makes more sense for it to be next year. Also, there's just a lot of, we're still sort of phasing out of the world of COVID-19. We're not fully out of the woods yet. Things are just kind of starting to be on the horizon now. And there's still a lot of, for lack of a better word, uncertainty in terms of exactly how the rest of the year is going to play out. And so it's probably safer to say that things like this are going to be more dependably happening next year. There's a lot less like what if-ery having to do with it. But also the fact that it'll be the 40th anniversary. But hopefully at the very least, we'll have more information this year as this year goes on. And as we get closer to the end of the year, hopefully we'll get more press releases, maybe some sneak peeks of things. I just really hope they let us in on some of the production aspects of it, because that's what's so fascinating to me. Is just like, how are they going to do this? What kind of puppets are these going to be? What's this choreography going to be like? What's that set going to look like? Will there be screens? What's going to happen? And we just have so many questions. As we did about Age of Resistance 2 years ago.
Exactly. I know. I still have quite a few questions as well for Age of Resistance, but
let's be real.
What's the middle? So all right, so I think we'll probably wrap up for this live show of Trial by Stone. Again, thank you so much for everyone that tuned in, and so this episode, this will be out this Wednesday on the podcast feed and whatnot. And I think I know originally I was actually going to put Celadon Part 1. That was actually going to come out this Wednesday, but then this sort of popped up, so we'll just push that to the next fortnight. But we've got a lot of shows in the works, and sort of keep loving the Dark Crystal, and always lots to talk about regardless.
Thanks for hanging out with us and theorizing and hypothesizing. Feel free to keep on dropping comments about what you think is going to happen. I mean, this video is still here. Get down there and tell us what you think it's going to be like. What shows, if any, are there going to be any shows out there that we can even compare this to? Because I'm imagining it's just going to be not like anything we've seen at all. Much like the Dark Crystal was in every sense of the word in the first place. It's not like anything else, and that's why we're here.
No, exactly. I mean, Dark Crystal, it was a film that's, people say, in a way that's like way ahead of its time, and much the same, I think, with Age of Resistance. It's like there's just nothing like it. And that's really what makes the world incredible. Yeah. All right. So again, thank you so much. If you want to, we're on Facebook, facebook.com/Dark Crystal Podcast, on Twitter @Dark Crystal Pod, on Instagram @Dark Crystal Podcast, and you can follow us on those social medias. And also, if you want to check our previous episodes on darkcrystalpodcast.com, so you can check all that out, all that back catalog of shows, and also, we're on every podcast platform that we're out there. So definitely check them out.
And on YouTube.
All right. Yeah. And YouTube too. Yeah. Don't want to forget them. Yeah. Yeah. We have some video content there as well. So yeah,
Maybe.
very good stuff. Yeah. All right. I'll see you later, everyone. And yeah, stay tuned for more Trial by Stone.